Welcome to Beyond the Dragon, where we explore indie tabletop role-playing games and their design, to inspire you to play them or take what you like for your own creations. Hi there, my name's Oscar C. Tango.
And my name is Sun.
We're both tabletop game designers and professional game masters who love TTRPGs, and today we'll be discussing NZR. NZR is a naturalist hack of OZR, last week's game, written by Nakade. The game was published on December 28th, 2021, and is 10 pages long in spread format, so it's actually 20, and is free. The game aims to provide a more natural style of game in line with new school Renaissance style of game, which is a more spirit over form style of game that is descended itself from OSR. In terms of the main engine, NZR is different in a few ways from OZR in terms of its main rules. However, the most immediate way from a straight-up dice perspective is that instead of a d6 roll-under system, it is a d20 plus a number of d6 roll-over system with a consistent target of 12 unless you implement an optional rule. The number of d6s is determined by your number of things that would allow you to overcome a challenge. And if you have all three, you don't, because there's a list of three, like things like, oh, hey, do you have this, this, and this? If all three, you don't need to roll. If 2 or 1, you get a number of d6s, and at 0, you can't even try. So with that, that's the main engine change. Sun, what do you think of NZR overall?
So, for me, NZR, I like what it's attempted to do. It's with it being based on OZR, there's a decent amount of changes, and I've liked some of the introductions that it's provided here. Like with OZR, there were traits. In NZR, they're knacks. But also, NZR's kind of entirely did away with luck and replaced that in some form with saves, which is traits under a new name, basically, except specifically stated for basically avoiding danger. There's definitely things that I like about it in NZR, but also I'm curious on a few couple changes. For me, yes, this is definitely a different take on OZR's OSR foundation, with NZR being an NSR detachment from the emulation, but spirit of OSR. I'm going to keep getting confused with that. Yeah, attempting to bring in a more naturalist take based on what Nakade has specified, and they've stayed at the very beginning what they're attempting to do. So yeah, there's definitely parts that I like about it, but also things I'm curious about.
There are things that I also like about NZR. I think that the game manages to achieve Nakade's own goal about being a more naturalist game. I wouldn't necessarily say that I consider it to be more naturalist, but by the definition given in NZR, I would say it does achieve that. I would honestly have to say I prefer OZR, but NZR does some things that I like more, and it makes quite a bit of reference to my favorite fantasy game of all time, so bonus points for that.
And just for clarity's sake, we are recording NZR directly after OZR. This is a double recording session for us, so OZR is fresh in our mind right now.
Indeed it is.
So that'll probably help with some comparisons, but also we are trying to look at NZR on its own. Definitely.
Yes, very much so. Our motto is give every game its own spotlight, no matter how few pages. Treat them all equally. The only reason big games get a special billing is because it takes us longer to read them.
So with that in mind, why don't we move on into the thematics type of thing that we think help fulfill what this game is?
Yeah.
Do you have an offering?
So characters are made a bit differently. So in NZR, the way characters are handled are that instead of traits, you have knacks, which Sun mentioned, which are things that you can do. A knack might be something like spotting hidden objects, see a little bit better in the dark, hold your own against an enemy of a similar size. They don't have to be super impressive, Because if you can't hold your own against an enemy of a similar size, what happens when one shows up? So, that is, I think, a very good thing about, like, and they do work very much in a concept of a fiction. Oh, what can I do? Well, as long as you aren't in danger or pushing your limits, your knack gives you an auto success. So it's like, oh, well, it's dark in here. Oh, well, I have a knack for seeing a little bit better than average in the dark. So what do I see? And it's like, okay, well, you get a bit of half detail here. So, you can kind of make things out. And it's helpful. And then, again, as mentioned, saves, which are a way to ignore incoming danger, but when they're used, they're spent. So it's kind of like luck, yeah, and it's also kind of like traits, where instead of advantage, you just don't roll, which is a common theme. Instead of, here's advantage, the game just says if you would beat it, you don't. If you have something that gives you an obvious advantage over it, then don't bother rolling, which is a much more naturalist style. This is, I think, one of the core things about the game that make it so that it is more naturalist. It says, here are things that would give you advantage. If they apply, don't roll. You beat the thing, but you might have spent it.
And jumping on that with Ozia, since I'll just bring it up, yeah, the traits there were single words, while here, the knacks and the saves, they are sentences. They're leaning in on, providing a little bit more natural language and emphasis on the character and what you are doing to get this automatic thing. Because, knacks, it's basically, as NZR states, it's fiat. This will just allow you to do the stuff without, in a stressful situation. And the same thing with saves. It's a narrative way of how you avoid danger. If the one save that I start with is I dodge out of the way at the last minute, that means how I'm avoiding danger most of the time is, dexterous and agility based. And then eventually when I can get a new save where I take the blow using my thick skin, well, now I'm, kind of the tough brute, just pushing through it type of thing. So it definitely infers a lot more on the narrative side of what is happening, and you stating that using these saves.
What about you?
For me, yeah, you mentioned knacks. For me, then jumping off that with knacks is when play is occurring during the conversation of play. The referee will describe a situation, and then the players will ask for clarification before they act. But then anytime you choose to do something that is risky, the referee asks if you wish to test fate. This is where the dice rolling comes into play. They'll describe the consequences, and then play continues. Testing fate. The referee will ask 3 questions, and if you have the relevant knack, equipment, or ample time, that would be useful to in this risky situation, then yes, you do it. But if you've only answered yes to 1 or 2 of those, then you need to divine fate. And if you say no to all 3 of those, I don't have a knack for this, I don't have the equipment, and I don't have ample time, then you just cannot do it. You just cannot. To divine fate, roll a d20 and a 1d6 for each related knack or equipment. Add the d20 and take the highest d6. If it's above or equal a 12, you succeed in the task. I really like this question-based thing. Do you just have the stuff that you need? Fair enough, don't need a roll. But if you've only got a little bit, then yes, now we need to see if the roll takes place and you actually do succeed.
Yeah, and again, I think this really leans into the naturalistic style that the game is trying to present. It just says, here are some questions. If the answer is yes, don't worry about rolling, because it's not important, because a lot of times games will say, oh, and there's a risk of failure for rolling, and that's kind of vague. This says, here's what you need to know for if there's a risk of failure. Here are your questions to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that's worth noting is that you can very clearly see the SOTDL influence in this game. Because that is a d20 plus boons.
Yep.
And also the fact that the target is 12 and not 10, I'd be willing to bet I'd be willing to bet money that Nakade plays with the bell curve dice rules.
And, to me personally, I would just see it as, well, instead of going for 10 and just having like a, technically a 50-50 chance, bump it up so it's a little bit more difficult, because you couldn't say yes to all of it. So it's going to be a more difficult task. But, maybe. Maybe.
But
What about you? What's your second offering?
so actually, speaking of the time thing, there is one exception to the "do you have time," and that is danger. Now, this is the danger mechanic in this game is actually, I think, very, very, very good, and answers one of our main complaints about OZR. Danger slows down time and changes the fate testing roll. In danger, everyone gets to try and do one thing, then gives the spotlight to somebody else. This is for all danger: combat, violent storms, and environmental hazards and traps. It's
And
a
it
very
even
good
calls
system.
out diplomacy and crises of confidence.
Yes. And so it slows down time. The amount of time doesn't necessarily matter, but everyone gets to do one thing. Consequences happened. Continue on until the event is resolved, or everyone has died, which I suppose is itself a resolution. So that slowdown of time is a really good system, and since obviously you don't have time, it changes what testing fate is. Now it's a question of, do I have an advantage, prior experience with something like this, and the skills necessary to do this. The advantage is gear, the skills are a knack, but experience is just, have I seen anything like this ever before? And that ties into the XP system called lessons. So if you have a lesson that from before this, then you get an extra thing for your d6 pool or to your 3, which means new adventurers are almost always going to have to roll for danger, but those who survive are going to be a lot more well equipped to handle upcoming problems.
Indeed. Oh, and I do want to make a mention that the edge over the threat is not just equipment, but it's like any aid or stealth or surprise as well.
Yes.
So it's basically the situational advantage that you might have.
Situational,
no, yes.
experiential, and skills.
Yeah. I like, and that's the thing that I do like, the switch up of, when you're in danger, these are the 3 questions you need to answer. If you're not in like danger, death, time, and just risky, these are the questions you need to ask for.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to handle with testing fate for the would there be a risk of failure? Well, here are your questions. And then when it says danger, you would never have time, so we're changing the questions to be more relevant.
And one thing I did want to make mention, since it's connected right next to it, is if fate must intercede, divine your fate as a regular roll. If it should be noted that rolls in danger often carry more risk, but also commensurate reward. You should not measure each blow and parry as in a traditional role-playing game unless you desire that sort of experience. So it's just straight up calling, hey, you're not going to be rolling literally blow for blow. You can you can speed things up and montage through this danger. You're not playing a tactical game unless you really want to in this instance.
Good old narrative combat.
Then for me, this is a great progression of things. I'll talk about experience. When to gain experience, you make note when you have survived a death, achieved a momentous deed, or survived a session of play. Write down what you have learned in your records. This is a lesson. When you have more lessons than your knacks and saves combined, you gain a new knack or save based on those lessons. These lessons then can't be used to gain new knacks, so you then just reset your lessons back to 0. I really like this. I've seen it in a couple other games that use this kind of concept, but you writing down have a journal or record of the things that you experience, and they are literally your experience points. I love that.
Yeah. Points that you experienced are experience points.
What do you think?
I mean, no, I agree. I think that lessons is a very, very good system, especially because it directly ties into the fate mechanic. I like it a lot, and I mean, I don't have much to expand on with it except for a later criticism, but that is just a minor thing. And I'm not sure it's. You know what? I'm not sure it's a valid criticism, so I'm just going to discuss it briefly.
Okay.
Uh, so unlike no, I'm trying to. So this game requires 2 XP to level up. To start off, because you have to have more than your saves and traits, or sorry, knacks combined. And you start
Max
off,
plus saves combined. Yeah.
with a knack and a save, but then you only gain 1 each level. So unlike NZR, where it takes 2 XP to hit your first level, in OZR. In NZR, it takes you 3 to hit your first level, but you also have more ways to get XP. So I guess it balances out. Also, you can't bank XP that wasn't used. So if you get 5 XP that session, you instantly level up and drop to 0, which is a little bit less satisfying and isn't a problem in OZR because you only get XP per session.
Fair enough. Yeah, based on the rules, yeah, can definitely see what you mean by that. Yeah. For me, since I have experienced a couple more NSR games, like Can and a couple other games like that, where advancements are done in a way where, yeah, when you have done this thing, just either you advance or check if you advance. The concept of, wait, so I can be gaining so much experience or so many levels in one session. It's like, yeah, totally. It is kind of like oh, okay, this is kind of weird. I think it definitely falls into that category and achieves the same concepts. Like because in those types of games where an advancement would occur, it specifically states, what this game kind of is about as well. So in NZR, like to me, based on what I've just said, it's you surviving, on the edge of death, achieving momentous deeds, and surviving a session of play. So it's doubling down on surviving and then achieving momentous deeds. But then also it does lean back on the player about, writing down what is a momentous deed. Maybe work with the referee and the rest of the group. And then you write down what you've learned. So it adds in a little bit of the character building there. It's a little journal. What does your character think of these moments?
Yeah, and again, this is very good naturalistically. My main thing is that mechanically, if you've hit your second level, you have 2 knacks and a save, and you hit 5 XP, you drop to 0 anyways. You don't get to bank that, even though you still gain another lesson, which is good.
Yeah, like in that interpretation, yeah, like I guess it can suck, but also I guess in the same sense, there's a high chance that you'll be getting at minimum 3 lessons per session.
At minimum, you're going to get 1 per session because what qualifies as a momentous deed is kind of, you could very easily not achieve 1.
Actually, yeah, that's true. At minimum, you'll get 1. And based on how OSR and NSR games are, you're probably going to be surviving death at least once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? I actually no. You know what? Here's what I have to say. I think lessons are a fantastic system, and again, I think it does the naturalism thing very well. My only change would be like bank XP that's not spent getting you your new level.
And since we are making a little mention of it, I'll make mention just here. Like, yes, the resetting lessons to 0 is a weird quirk I kind of had about the thing too. Yes. What about an offering from you?
On my end, the damage thing is very interesting to me. So the way that damage is dealt is again kind of similar to OZR, but with a twist. So Consequences of failure first make you drop an item or spend a save. And then when you are out of items and saves, you roll on a harm table with a 50% chance to just keep fighting, a 1 in 6 to get knocked out, and a 1 in 6 to die outright. You also spend a knack every time that you roll on this table. So when you have no more knacks, you die. So it is similar to the original, but with an increased chance of being seriously injured out of the gate once you lose all of your equipment and saves, which makes it so that knacks aren't quite HP, but also kind of are. It almost reminds me of Into the Odd and Mouse Ritter's system with strength going down and having to beat a lower and lower strength save.
Okay, yeah. I see.
And then also, you can use this table. It is related to suffering conditions. Anytime you suffer a poisoned or any kind of condition where conditions don't really necessarily do something, what you would do is you roll on the harm table, and on a 1 to 4, you're fine, and on a 5 to 6, you are either knocked out or killed. So better chances to survive a condition, but it also means that conditions are a good way to hypothetically seriously harm an enemy.
Yes. That's it for me in terms of like the thematical things for it. Actually, I'll make mention just the tone setting, because of how the knacks and the saves are written. It specifically calls out when you're getting together as a group. You need to sign the tone. This comes joined with the safety tools and the like, but specifically for tone, changing how the way you write knacks and saves will help infer the genre or the setting that you are trying to run itself. An example is for a heroic fantasy game, when the going gets tough, I can tell a joke to lighten up the mood and keep us up. But for the same save in a more grim setting, when the darkness threatens to overwhelm us, I can bring a scrap of hope. And then for a bleak apocalyptic world, the end comes for us all. But I can stall that dread for a little bit with the tales of a better time.
Wow, that sounds like a Darkest Dungeon line.
And I think it's a very, very small thing, but because of how this is, like a very narrative type thing, I think that really does emphasize this rule system.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it does emphasize how it is genreless, so that is very good.
I'm just happy to go properly into the criticisms now.
I have a couple of things very, very briefly, just to
Okay.
mention. Resting, you get a night. Every night you rest, you get a save back, but it's a week for knacks. So that's kind of an interesting thing. It means you can maybe rest for a night in or around a dungeon and get your saves back. But knacks, it really does hammer home that knacks are the things you don't want to be losing when you are doing that whole harm table. Yep, we've already covered XP for lessons. Hirelings give you extra knacks and saves, which I think is very cool. And they also have a health system for either getting hurt or discouraged, which is nice.
I was going to bring that up in the standouts. Yep, they're great.
And then enemies, instead of having knacks, have one-word traits again. I assume that when they run out of traits, they die, but it isn't really specified, so it could be when they hit, they roll the harm table and cross out a trait. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that sounds like what the mechanic is probably intended to be.
I will check with you, but I feel like it's not that.
Oh, interesting. Is this a free talk or a criticism conversation bit? Because I'm now ready to go to criticisms.
Yeah, well, we can go to the criticisms section now.
All right, because I'm curious about what you have to say on that.
Okay, straight up for me. The layout, the 2 columns. I'm totally fine with 2 column layout. That's fine by me. And the PDF that I have is by default a spread, a 2-page spread.
It's only spreads.
Yeah, it's only spreads. I'm totally fine with both of those. That's totally fine for me. I love my spreads, and I'm totally fine with a 2-column layout. But, oh, it pains me. The columns do not cleanly break sentences or paragraphs. I really don't want to start. Oh, I like these Hirelings rules. I'm looking through the Hireling list of examples. Hunter, what it is. It's got 3 hearts. I can. Oh, okay. I need to go to the next column. Scavenge for 4 people in a day given vegetation. No, don't want that. That's my first one.
No, you know what? Absolutely, I can see how that would be one for you. For me, I can see what this game means by more naturalistic, but there are a lot of areas where I think it kind of overcomplicates things a tad. The fact that you're adding d6s to your fate roll, I mean, it kind of does make sense with adding a bell curve, but why have it be a d20 at all? You could have made it be a d6, and it's you gotta beat, I don't know, a 4 or a 5. And then having an extra d6 significantly increases your odds of that.
Would you? I wouldn't say that's a knock against the naturalist, but just the dice mechanic itself. Just adding in a d20 for no reason.
Yeah. Well, okay. No, you know what? Let me explain why I say that's a knock against the naturalism thing. There's a part of this game that explicitly states naturalism is meant to get rid of unnecessary or artificially constrained rules.
Oh, no, actually, specifically they're talking about the NSR bit, and then they go into how they think the NSR embraces naturalism and how they then define naturalism as blah, 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 blah.
But a d6 roll under system was incredibly straightforward, elegant, and well balanced, and you've replaced it with this d20 system. That seems more artificial to me.
I see.
That seems like a change to bring it in line with what's common rather than what is most effective.
I see.
But also without a luck mechanic, maybe it makes more sense.
For me, the weirdness is really just okay, it's using a d20 with d6s, and I'm okay, it's the Shadow of the Demon Lord dice system.
It is.
Beyond that, I'm okay with it. It doesn't, it's not a big shift for me. I'm totally fine with that. I don't think it really makes any break from what it's attempting to do. But no, I can definitely see it's why not just make it all d6s and you just roll a single d6 and then can add extra.
Yeah,
I can definitely see that too. Totally fine. Yeah.
Or even just fucking advantage on your d6s, where because that's what more boons or more d6s in this does anyways. So then it just becomes an increasingly large amount of advantage. But then you start getting into fit D territory, I guess. But I don't see why that's a bad thing necessarily, especially with the way NZR is doing it and its focus on the more narrative and naturalistic style. I think that little bit of fit D tweak would probably fit in here.
Yes, in terms of just the dice rolling and okay, why is the d20 here? Yeah, I to make things just a little simpler, just in terms of just getting rid of something. Yeah, just make when you need to divine fate beta 5 or something, or beta 4. Yeah, that could have easily been what it is, and then just get more advantage. Yes, totally. But I will just still think it's I don't think this is a knock against its naturalism goal.
All right, so actually, I my other criticism had a bit to the enemy trait thing. That's why it was in my game thing, so I could bring it up in criticisms, just because I'm it doesn't seem like there's a good system for determining when an enemy would hypothetically be dead. Maybe it's when they're out of traits.
Oh,
maybe it's when the ref feels like it, because there's nothing that explicitly states an enemy dies when.
Okay, so
So,
no, it states once a creature loses all traits, it is considered dead or defeated.
oh wait, oh shit, did I miss that? Then never mind. I'm going to ignore that. Ignore what I have said then. Okay, so that's why. That's why you thought it wasn't that, because it explicitly states that I'm fucking wrong. Okay, cool. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, although I do kind of like the idea of using the harm table for enemies too, but that's just because I think that would be funny to hit a dragon, make it a single trait, and then die.
I see. Then for me, I like the conditions, but also there is a thing in there. Conditions. If you become burdened, exhausted, poisoned, or other similar conditions, the referee will, decide whether it is severe enough to be considered a greater wound, which would make you roll on the harm table. And then yes, ignore results 1 to 4, fall unconscious, the like. But there is a sentence in there that the referee will decide whether it is severe enough to be considered, a greater wound. So does that mean minor conditions are just going to stack up to become severe enough? Is this like a small thing PCs should track? Is this part like the narrative just in the world kind of take? It's like, oh, you were poisoned, but it's not enough to worry about. Well, you were poisoned a little bit, but make sure you track that.
You know what? I think it would be the difference between food poisoning and getting bit by a highly venomous snake, or eating a toxic frog.
So it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, so is there a reason for me to make mention that you were poisoned, but only a little bit? Yeah, is that just part of the narrative? Yeah, like, oh, you've just been food poisoned. Yeah, as you said.
Okay. No, that's fair. I think it probably comes into the mindset of a bit from Into the Odd and Mouse Rider, where it's like you can do warband scale damage if it's vicious enough. It's like if this poison is significant enough, then you have to roll. Or like, oh, how encumbered are you? Well, you're carrying, one of those rocks that they built the pyramids out of. That's pretty encumbered.
Oh yeah, but I guess it's that clause of like they will decide whether it's severe enough that you treat it as something that will incur an actual mechanic procedure to happen. Otherwise, is this just more so flavor text type of thing?
Okay, yeah.
That's what I'm more getting at. That's all.
You debunked one of my criticisms, and I only had the other one about like the D20 being a bit of an odd change for something supposed to be more naturalist, because it seems like a change to bring it more in line with what's common than what makes more sense. So,
well, since you mentioned that, I'm going to bring up an optional rule that I would critique a little.
Ooh, critiquing optional rules. We're so professional and fancy.
In the danger chapter, when you are testing danger and the like, there is an optional rule, like testing fate. You need to get a 12 or above, and same thing with danger. But there is an optional rule to make only on a D20 roll of 15 or above, it's a success. But each advantage that you would have reduces a twist threshold by 1, which starts at 15. So if you have 5 advantages, this twist threshold is now 10. If you roll above the twist threshold and under a 15, you still succeed, but at a cost or twist. For example, you might slay the goblin, but embed your sword in its chest as a result, making you yourself vulnerable. I like this concept, but because it introduces the success with a twist thing that I think is really nice. But I think with a little too much complicatedness to it, it's like, okay, so I need to make sure I'm above a 15 or above, but now I need to also make sure I'm above this twist threshold.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And this is where I think this is why the D20 was introduced, even though this is an optional rule.
Makes sense.
Because otherwise, I don't see how you could easily do the twist threshold thing in the D6 thing because in that sense, you have to hit a 6 and then advantages drop the 6 to a 4. So at least there's some some slight gap between the twist threshold and a success. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I think the D20 is here.
I
If there was any
guess, but it's
reason
an optional
beyond
rule
Shadow of the Demon Lord.
anyways. It's an
Oh yeah,
optional rule
totally.
anyways. So
Yeah,
I mean,
but
yeah, I don't know. I still think that that's more complicated than it needs to be, and that the forged thing would have. I think that implementing a forged D6 dice system where it's like, what are your advantages and your tags, but keeping the OSR style would. I think that would have been better.
So yeah, that's the one thing that made me go, huh, interesting. I definitely prefer just keeping the test fate rolls the same. Just beat a 12. And there's something that I'll bring up very soon. That is another optional rule. But they're the only critiques that I really have about NZR.
Well, considering that I keep talking about Forged in the Dark, please look forward to my game pending FI-NZR, Forged in the NZR, where I replace the D20 dice mechanic and nothing else.
Yes.
Project pending until I actually put it out.
Well, then we will go on to standouts, and I'll just quickly take the first one. There is another optional rule that I do like. If during a test fate of just a risk, if you only answered yes once when testing fate, the divine fate target number is now 15.
Yes, I like that rule, actually. I saw that. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
And I would, sure, bring that into the danger test fate one as well.
Ooh, yeah.
Why not? If anything, I don't think it actually states that it wouldn't, but yeah, why not? I like that it provides this rule for an extra bit of granularity, but only just increasing the danger a little bit. And since it's an optional rule, the creator obviously was like, I'm just fine with just a 12, but it shows you how you could slightly manipulate the rules a little bit. So I think this is a neat optional rule.
No, I agree, actually. That is a really good optional rule. For my first standout, there are only 3 example enemies given within NZR. One of them is a basilisk. This is not the 5th edition basilisk. This is the Shadow of the Demon Lord basilisk, my favorite basilisk. This was a good choice.
Do you want to?
No, it's a free game. They can download it and read for themselves. It's like 10 pages.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
You want to find out why I like this basilisk? Buy Shadow of the Demon Lord, and then also download this game for free, or pay the creator because they deserve some money for putting in the effort. And then look at those 2 basilisks and see why I like big basilisk. Go fuck yourself. Not you, the viewers, just people who are fighting it.
Then something that you touched on before. Hirelings. I think how they've done hirelings here is very neat. Yeah. Hirelings are temporary knacks or saves that you just add to your records. But the thing is, these knacks or saves are not crossed out or used up. They themselves have hearts, which can be lost in combat or when discouraged. And then when they're at 0 hearts, they flee or die. And then they give a couple example hirelings, and 3 that I'll just call out is the Torchbearer. Knack, 1 heart. And the knack is, I always have a light ready. So, this is on your character records. So when you're in a dungeon and the like, you can just refer back to this knack, which means, no, I'm all good. I can see. I have my hireling with me. I always have a light ready. And then the Thug, which is a knack, 2 hearts. I can hold my own against a weak foe. Because I got my Thug with me, and we're going to beat the crap out of this foe. And then a save example of a hireling, Shield Bearer. Save 3 hearts. I can take a blow.
Yeah.
Just simple as that. How did I avoid this danger? No, I got my shield bearer with me. Shield bearer is going to take a blow for me. I think this is a great way to do hirelings.
I agree. I think this is one of the best ways to do hirelings. You don't have to worry about stats. You just have to, like, what do they add to your sheet? A knack, a save. It's definitely one of the best systems in the game. Like standout. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah, no, 100%. This is one of, if not, this is my favorite thing from NZR. How hirelings is like a sentence, and obviously they wouldn't be in the game, but they're kind of nebulous. They're just a thing that occurs or can occur when, a save needs to happen.
Yeah, and
I think this is great.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is, I swear to God, I think torchbearers might be an actual fucking meme in the like every game has a torchbearer hireling. I think they might be a meme.
It's not a meme. It's literally how things would go. Are you gonna hold a torch when you have a shield and sword in both your hands? No, you're gonna have some torchbearers with you so they can light their way, and so you can see what you're stabbing at.
To me, they're a meme, but only because I did something really stupid and funny based off of Dark Souls or Elden Ring one time with a torchbearer, where it's like the super torchbearer. You get a pole with like 6 torches on it, and you get to hit people with it, and it does like 4d6 fire damage.
I see.
Oh, funny times. I got fucked up by those torchbearers in fucking Elden Ring. The way that saves and knacks are separated is, I think, a really good system, because knacks being a passive bonus, or something when you have to do a fate roll, are, I think, a really good system. And again, I already said it before, but like, it really emphasizes the naturalist idea. And then being able to gain more saves is a separate thing to just shrug off attacks, and keeping those separate, I think, really, really helps with the idea of how different your character can be, because you can have a knack for one thing but be able to shrug off danger in a very different way.
Yes.
And it gives the traits from OZR more mechanical weight by separating them and showing how they do things differently.
Yes, no, I do like the expansion of OZR's traits here with knacks and saves. Definitely.
But that's all from me. Should we go on to free talk?
I've still got some standouts.
Go for it.
Talk about.
Stand out, my guy.
So, another thing that brings mention, talks about like the narrative, play within the world type of game, is equipment. When you buy or pick up a new equipment, you note it down and where you carry it on your person. So, like, I've bought some rope. It's in my backpack. And if you can't find a good place but still want it, you are burdened the condition. This infers that referees should call out how danger... No, I wrote this backwards. In the danger section, when minor wounds could occur, it brings out an example that this could knock weapons out of locations based on hit location. And when I saw that, I'm like, ooh, is there a hit location table? No. But no, that's just part of the narrative. A goblin slashes at your back. Oh, I've got my rope on my back. It's minor harm, so your rope's dropped. Type of situation.
Yeah.
I think that lends itself more to what this game is trying to do.
I agree. And and lacking a hit location table is fantastic, because... Oh god, was it this game, or was it OZR, or was it a third thing I was reading that was talking about, like, super long, complicated save chains? Hey, look. No, it must have been NZR. Doesn't NZR have a section where it's like, roll to save, roll to hit, roll to wound, roll to have armor?
No.
What the fuck was I reading that said that then?
You're currently reading like 3 or 4 books this
I'm reading
week,
like 15 books. Like, let's not even lie, because I read OZR and NZR. I'm reading like a bunch of books for work. This might have been from a Reddit post, even, that I was reading today, like this morning. I remember seeing that and being like, yeah, fuck 40k stupid bullshit dice mechanic.
So it's none of the books that we're talking about today. So
Oh, well
no.
then, never mind. Please disregard that, but also, I really like the lack of a hit location table. I think that just, like... Because, yeah, like, there's also mention, like, if you slash the goblin's knees, it might lose the nimble rate.
Exactly, exactly. There's what you do in the narrative should infer, a little bit of the mechanical bit in this type of game.
It should,
For
especially
me,
since it's all
another
narrative.
thing, equipment list. I love randomized price lists.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, how much does this cost? It's a 1d6 coin.
Yeah.
Just give it to me like that. I love that stuff. Common items are 1d6 coin, uncommon 2d6, and then rare items they're 20 coin plus. I like that. It allows, just based on just doing a random roll, it allows, if you really want to get into it, a little bit of like price changing based on the seasons and the like. You can re-roll, like when you roll the die, that's what it's going to be forever or for a season, or maybe when you roll the die once, players can then try and haggle it down and they re-roll with advantage, etc., etc. There's a lot you can do with just making the price fixed to a die instead of just a flat number. So I like that it's in here, even though it doesn't state any of that extra stuff. I like that just being the default. And then it also says illicit items, which are marked by an asterisk, may vary in price by 2d6 coin, depending on the availability, time to procure, and level of suspicion. So it's nice that they've just tied that in there. It's like, oh, these are, more shady items.
Yeah, illicit items varying by 2d6 is fantastic.
Hmm. And then the last thing that kind of stands out for me is something that I did mention in OZR that has been slightly expanded upon in NZR is the encounter roll. NZR just states instead of like after every turn, like OZR, this being travel or dungeon turn, here it just states any amount of significant time passes. This will change depending, it could be 10 minutes for a dungeon, it could be 4 hours for watches, but any significant time, really. And then roll a d6, 1 to 2, silence. 3, environment changes. 4, a consumable is used up. So this ties into if you have a little food or light mechanic. That's what this would be. 5, foreshadows encounter. 6 is an encounter. And if you want a little bit more strict timekeeping, you can add in the danger clock, which is a 6-segment clock for those that know Power by the Apocalypse and Forge in the Dark and even Lumen. Those types of clocks, you fill in 1 slice for each encounter roll, and like if the party takes on a heavy treasure, they're slowed down, etc. You just decide when you're going to fill in the slice, and when filled in, something dramatic / dangerous occurs. And I would 100% make sure the players see this danger clock, because it's also a tension mechanic as well. What do you think?
No, yeah, seeing an encounter clock is always a good thing, and especially because I believe there was a comment about making maps and like if you're lost, making fires and being loud could bring attention that you both might and might not want, and the encounter clock being mixed with that is, I think, a great like thing.
Hmm. But yeah, beyond that, they're the standouts that I have. So, do you have anything else, or are we moving on to free talk?
I have nothing else. It's free talk for me.
Okay. What do you have to say? Things that, excite us, making hacks or things that we want to take from this game.
Danger
These are the free
time.
talk time.
I would take
Okay.
Danger Time, and I think that the idea of Danger Time and the fact that knacks and traits or knacks and saves are separated and separated into full sentences means that hacking NZR into a more like out of its hypothetical purpose, because it is hypothetically built. It's a NSR rework of OZR to be a dungeon crawler, but you could take it out of that genre. I could see with the danger slowdown making a game about just like a long and unpleasant journey where like combat isn't a function, or a game about like political bullshittery. So I think the danger slowdown, because what constitutes danger is emphasized, and the way that it does turns, and the fact that you can use saves versus rolls to do things. I could see reworking it into a political style game.
And the fact that it even states in its description crises of confidence or diplomacy, it kind of already infers that a little bit too.
Indeed.
For me, yep, I really like the knacks and the saves being like sentences and just an expansion on the one-word traits from OZR. I really specifically like the saves, because that puts a personality characteristic on how you avoid danger. Like you specifically state, yeah, this is how I typically avoid danger. And eventually, when you gain more experience, you'll gain more different ways of avoiding danger. It really creates a personality to your character on how you don't die.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Then back over to you.
I don't particularly have a lot to say about this that I can't say about OZR is the main thing. Like, they're very similar. I did mention already that I would change it to be maybe a Forged in the Dark style dice mechanic. Oh no, I found it.
Oh?
Remember, I want to say Tuesday when we were chatting? Or maybe...
Yes.
And I was playing Metro 2033, and I was talking to you about monster hunting. But, like, from a political perspective, this is it. This is the game.
Okay. Okay. I see what you mean.
So, in fact, look forward to my Forged in the NZR political monster hunter game, everyone. Oh, wait, do you want me to, like, expand? Do you want me to commit a suggestion to a game for video, the thing I categorically refuse to do, which is talk about my upcoming projects?
Yeah, if you want to.
Oh, no, you're gonna peer pressure me into actually making a game, you fuck! Alright, cool. I've done that enough to you today, so I suppose it's fair.
Okay, you have the floor.
Okay, so, while I was playing through Metro 2033 this week, for reasons that are not really important, I was playing through the library section and murdering every librarian I could see, because violence is the answer to all of my problems. It occurred to me that it might be a very, very fun and good idea to make a political-style monster hunting game where it's not just your monster hunters tracking down these beasts to their lairs, but it's like, no, you are nobility, and you aren't, like, hot shit leading armies dueling nobility. You're, like, 18th century French nobility, so, okay, maybe a little bit of dueling, but very, very foppish and very, like... We have parties. We live lives of decadence. Maybe not 1800s then. Maybe like pre-French Revolution French nobility. There we go. That's a good description.
Just before the revolution.
Yeah, like maximum like oligarch levels of like just foppishness and extraordinary wealth and opulence. So what winds up happening is that you start to notice that like undead and horrible monsters are infiltrating the nobility. And I don't mean this as in like, oh no, we have raised someone of unnoble birth to the peerage. Like, no, oh no, Duke Scott Wellenstein III has become a horrible werewolf! Or, like, oh no, have you heard about the murders during the Summer Jubilee? Oh, I wonder who that might have been. So basically the idea is that it is a mixture of political intrigue about, like, creating parties, making favors, getting to know people, and, like, politicking with people to see who you know and what you know about them and getting secrets, and all of that, and favors, and all of that, like, political drama, for the purpose of finding out who one of the monstrous nobles is, luring them into a trap, and murdering them in a way that is not suspicious and would not make the results of doing so fall on your head for killing another member of the peerage. And so I think with the slowdown and the danger mechanics here, and with the suggested Forged in the Dark dice thing, and with the idea of knacks and saves being one sentence long things that you can kind of do, I think I could work this into a game like that. I think this would be a good system to try that with.
Well, I'm glad that this has helped refine and solidify that idea.
Yeah.
That's really good, and that's another reason why we keep reading new books.
Yeah, look, see, here's a perfect example of how we hope you can use these things to come up with your own ideas, because
It,
I had a half-assed idea while shooting fucking giant apes in Metro, and I wound up with this because I read NZR.
yeah, this is 100% why we do Beyond the Dragon. Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's like
Uh,
50%. The other reason is just, to just show off
oh,
more games and give them an equal level of spotlight in the indie.
oh, totally. Yeah, we have like 3 points. Then for me, I would 100% take the um, like I've seen it before, but this has definitely reminded me of it and kept it fresh in my mind. How hirelings are just basically an ability on your character sheet. Sure, in the game they are a person, but mechanically they're just another feat, another trait, another ability on your character sheet. And I love that. It simplifies the hireling concept way, way, way down
It
and
does.
makes it a lot more manageable when you have many more hirelings.
Yeah, and if
And
you're willing to tweak the
100%.
traditional like stat-based idea of OSR games, I could see how you could, if you're willing to step away from that concept, you could make hirelings more like this in more games overall.
Because without getting too much into detail, like there is a concept in Grit, my roguelike Lubin dungeon crawling game, where um, you can spend a resource to retroactively state that you have a hireling to basically sacrifice themselves or do something if you have the glory or unlocked something back in base camp. And
Is this in the new version or in the old version? Because I don't remember that
it
from the beta test.
it wasn't in the old version, but it was in the alpha version.
Oh man, what more reasons for you to go ahead and publish Grit 2.0?
It was a ability called Fogua,
Au
because
revoir.
it relates back to a apparently how business people like it's code for you know crunch or something, and how their underlings are put through the ringer and they get the benefits or something like that. And back then, it was a lot more. The game was a lot more of a joke about corporate destruction of our lives.
Oh, true.
So yeah, Fogua was a term that I liked using for that. But now it's just like meat shield or whatever. Uh, but yeah, so I really like this concept of hirelings just an ability.
Yeah, it's a good concept.
Um, and then there was another thing. No, no, yeah, it was hirelings, the traits and the knacks. No, the knacks and the saves. And definitely, once again, I'm glad it's here, just the randomized price listing. But yeah, they're the things that I would definitely take from NZR and import into many other things that could work them in or base my own games from the ground up. So I think NZR definitely succeeds in what they're attempting to do in breaking away from the original procedures and concepts of the OSR and go for a more narrative within the world play based concept. In the case of Wanakade, the author of this book states it's more of a naturalism take. I think NZR does succeed in what they were attempting to do.
I agree. I think that NZR does what they wanted it to do. I just disagree with a little bit of what they wanted to do and would do it differently, which is the joy of people being different. You'll wind up with different perspectives on different things.
Hmm. Like the one thing that really stands out is like, um, I can see the D20 just being a D6, but beyond that, yeah,
All right.
I think it's a really neat system
All
and
right.
builds upon what OZR has
Yes.
done.
OZR. So yeah, if there's nothing else to say.
No, not from my end.
All right, well then, thank you for joining us today as we looked at NZR. Join us next time for more indie tabletop discussion and design. I've been Oscar C. Tango, and joining me has been Sun Gone.
You can find me at sungone_ on Twitter, Sun on Star Playing Games, and Sungone on itch.io.
And you can find me at StrandedTTRPG on Twitter, Oscar C. Tango on startplaying.games, and Stranded Publishing on itch.io. You can find all those links in the description. And remember, don't be afraid to adventure beyond the dragon.